Little inside knowledge on the In Goal Radio podcast. We do this little sync before we record because we're all in different spots, and this week we call it clapping, and then it makes sure that we can start our recordings, and it makes it easier for Dad, David Hutchison, every week. Well, Darren Millard and Kevin Woodley on this week's episode, and we did the sync just now, and Woody did the clapping, and now he's injured. He's day to day. Are you going to be able to shake that off?
I don't know. Like, I'm like SAWFT soft. Like, it is getting pretty bad. Darren stepping up and filling in for both me and Hutch traveling. Full disclosure, I was actually traveling on a family trip, did a little surfing in Tofino for the week, and I'm old.
Yeah.
And I am old.
How's the surf?
I don't know what was worse. It was good. It's perfect for an old man on a longboard. It was like shoulder high, right? So nothing more than that for me. Thank you very much. But two things. One, everything hurts. Surfing's like goaltending, to be honest with you. One, like I have to do all of Maria Mountain's stretches before I can go surf, all of her dynamic warm-up routine, because you've got to be able to sort of pop up and get that foot underneath you and up the board far enough. You have to have a lot of clearance through the hip. So in that way, like if your hips are gassed, you
so
can't
hard.
surf.
I can't do it. I have to do this two-stage.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's hard to catch the green waves, right? Like you can catch the wash waves, but hard to catch the green waves unless you can pop up. And so I did a lot of work on my hips while I was there, and they ached. Two, there's sort of the patience thing, right? Like you got to go out and you got to sit. You can't chase a puck.
You're terrible
and
at
make
that.
It come to you. You have to wait, because as soon as you chase the wrong wave, you miss the best wave of the set. Like you really have to sit and sort of zen out a little bit. And then when it's time to go, it's like goaltending. You wait, patience, and then boom, you got to go. And three, hot tub beers are awesome after both goaltending and surfing. The worst part, though, was out in the lineup, and these young kids are like, they're talking to each other. I'm like, man, there's a lot of old dudes out here tonight. And it took me about 5 minutes to realize they're talking about me.
Talking about you.
Oh. So thanks for carrying the load there last week. It is seriously taken me 3 or 4 days to recover. And the worst part, just like stepping on the ice and like toe picking, like last day, best wave, kids are surfing on the secondary breaks on the inside. Dad catches a good one, rides in, all proud, like, look at me, too cool for school. All the way in through the wash break, I'm just going right to the beach. My kids are all like, all right, look at my dad. Bail. Sandbar couldn't have been any deeper than my fin. Landed on my butt. I have the worst bruised tailbone ever. So between the clapping injury, the tailbone injury, the sore hips, like I've got 1 foot in the retirement home at this point, Darren. But it was a hell of a week.
Well, the good part is that you can just sit back and watch a lot of hockey now, because we've got the National Hockey League and the 2 bubbles, and they're going. Just a comment on all the equipment changes that we've seen through Phase 3 that have carried over to Phase 4.
Yeah, it's been really fascinating to watch. And we touched on this a couple of weeks ago. Obviously Lefebvre and the split from CCM, they're playing a big role in this. And as I said a couple of weeks ago, I think maybe early in the Lefebvre sort of dynamic of that split, I don't know that I considered it to be enough of a break, just because, they'd made the pro gear for CCM, and maybe I didn't give them enough credit with the L20.1 pad as, truly being a switch. So it has been fascinating to watch. It's been interesting, too, at times to see some of the reaction. I mean, everyone lost their minds when Kerry wore it for one day. Then he was back in CCM. Carter Hart wore it throughout camp. And it's interesting because a lot of guys, I watched them wear it throughout camp. Mike Smith wore his Bauer that he'd worn early in the season throughout camp. And then the last couple of days, Carter's back in CCM. Smith's back in his CCM. Peck has gone back to his CCM, and I'm not sure which way that one's even going to go, to be honest with you. When I started reaching out to some of the guys, I talked to Ben Bishop just about, are we surprised to see this type of gear switch? And he's trying the new ultrasonic with the Stabiliside knee. He said, no, not really. Like, yeah, it's playoff time, but like it is an opportunity to try new stuff out. He's got a set of each.
But there's so much practice time right now.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the other thing. Guys don't want to kill their game sets in practice. And so as I saw these guys switch back, I kind of thought, geez, I wonder, is there an element of, hey, I just want to wear something else? Because training camp, we never have 2-week training camp. Like you said this last week. Like training camp's normally 2-3 days and you're into preseason. These guys were on the ice for like 2 straight weeks. Literally thousands of butterfly drops and shots to the glove. And Carter Hart, sure enough, confirmed. He's like, yeah, that's what I was doing. And he brought his Lefebvre set. He's going to wear CCM. Looks like he's gone to a Lefebvre blocker, sticking with the CCM glove. The Lefebvre glove doesn't feel the same to him. But that's the setup he's going to go with. Lefebvre plus a CCM blocker for practice and CCM plus the Lefebvre blocker for game. So again, saving the gear doesn't mean he's going to go one way or the other long term, frankly. It's just how he's set it up. So it's been fascinating to watch.
Like Freddie Anderson, though, is a guy that switched completely.
Yeah, and that's a big one. And obviously, tough one on the Bauer side of things in terms of just, what he was, sort of a franchise tag guy, for lack of a better term, and under contract. And like the last time we saw a guy, and I don't know that his contract, they're all kind of different. Like, for example, Carey Price's contracts, like his runs through September. I don't know if they're all like that or if it depends when you sign them.
Right.
So Freddie's contract, calendar-wise, could have been up, or he may have broken it. And Carey was kind of the last guy, I think, that broke a contract like that, right? Remember when he was in Vaughan and went to Reebok CCM in the middle of a season? So, still under contract to Vaughan. So it does happen. These companies will never get in the way of a guy if he feels more comfortable in something else. And I think, I've texted Freddie a little bit on this, and he didn't want to get into it too much, and fully understand that. These guys don't want to get caught in the middle. That's the other thing. Binnington and Lefebvre. There's another guy that switched. He wore CCM, sort of first CCM-made E-Flex at the All-Star game. Told me 2 days later in Vancouver that he really liked it, but he didn't want to declare anything one way or the other, and he didn't want to get caught up in the middle of it. Freddie was kind of the same way, but you could tell there were some things he really liked about the gear. And I think if you've been paying attention, you aren't shocked. And it's not so much, I don't even think it's a Bauer thing. This is just a guy that's looking for answers right now.
We went to a cowling skate too, right?
Changed his skate.
Yeah.
Frankly, reached out to a goalie coach he used to work with that I know. I think he may be working with some different people on the mental side of the game right now. Making a lot of changes. But if you watch him during the season, I don't know how many people really notice this, but he changed and look at the Lefebvre pads, how short they are. He really went to a shorter pad. significantly.
How much? Give me an idea.
He's like an inch to an inch and a half below his max, where most guys are trying to play right to the max of what they're allowed under the NHL rules. He's either an inch or an inch and a half below that.
And what does that allow him to do?
Well, he was actually cutting his pads down, his Bauer pads down to get to that, right? So again, a guy who's looking for different answers to his game. He showed me in the locker room actually during the season why it works for him. And it kind of made sense. When he's in a narrow butterfly, even with the shorter pads, when he's in a wide butterfly with the shorter pads, it still closes. So he still feels like he has that 5-hole protection. He felt like longer pads, in order to have the tops meet when he dropped, he had to go into a narrow butterfly or a narrower butterfly. And he liked the mobility of being in a wider one. So it made sense. He was actually doing Tretiaks on the visiting room, locker room floor with me. I had my camera, but...
Hold on, explain a Tretiak. What a Tretiak is.
Well, the one knee up, one down, sort of back and forth. Left knee, right knee, left knee, right knee. He was doing it in his pads to show me how the shorter pads were perfect when he was in this wide butterfly going up and down. And it's too bad I wasn't allowed to pull out a camera at the time, but it would have made fantastic video. And it made a ton of sense. But when you look at his goal chart, he's given up. Somebody told me, I don't have the whole league, but somebody else who does told me the most 5-hole goals in the league this year. So, there's a bit of yin and yang, give and take, like everything in goaltending, give and take. So this whole conversation is fascinating. I think we get a little obsessed with it, and I understand why. It's a big deal, and having a new company or a new old company, or however you want to describe Lefebvre, it is a big deal. And they've been around a long time, and we've said before, they're master craftsmen. So not surprised guys are switching, especially the guys that have been wearing their gear. But this stuff, this is going to be interesting because this is just the start. This is going to carry over into whatever offseason we have. There were guys that didn't switch. Jacob Markstrom stayed in his CCM, didn't like the way the new Lefebvre sat on his skate. But don't forget, he was sent a different model. Lefebvre is still capable of making an E-Flex like Markstrom is going to wear with CCM. So Bobrovsky, similar type situation. Doesn't mean they're not going to switch to, you just don't know.
I have a theory.
There is going to... I'll give you one more little piece of information, and we've heard this from a couple of goaltenders. Nothing promised, nothing for certain, but the understanding has been made that they've come to the understanding that there's going to be money there. Like, it's not like they're just... I think a lot of people in the gear world like it when they like to rally, and I understand why around the smaller companies, and they like to paint this picture like this guy just switched because he loves the gear. But the reality is a lot of these guys have been told there's going to be money there, and I think probably the worst kept secret in the goaltending world is the link between the Lefebvres and True. So we'll see if that pans out, and that's where this money is evidently going to come from. So contracts will play a role in this once we get into a real offseason. Anybody that thinks it won't is probably being a little naive.
Can I tell you my theory?
Let's hear it.
Guys are bored. They had 4.5 months, and they had conversations with the manufacturers and reps, and we'll get you this, and then they got sent that, and they tried it, and they looked at it, and they liked it, and they fiddled with it every day. They had nothing going on, and their mind starts twirling, and they thought they'd try it, and they were bored, and they ended up trying it.
And certainly, as we saw Garrett Sparks on social media saying that pretty much anybody who wanted a set could get a set. Smart play by the Lefebvres, absolutely. They're not stupid people. They sent sets to whoever was willing to sort of test it. Interesting though. Like, you know who suffers through all of this is our buddy K. Like, right. He has to approve all of these. Like, I can't imagine he was super thrilled to see all these tests, all these sets sent to his office on spec versus, guaranteed they're going to use them. I can't imagine he was super thrilled with that coming out of a lockout.
Kay was bored too. Who are we kidding? He was bored too. So that gave him something to do.
Well, you imagine coming out of your pandemic, you come to your office and there's all this gear like piled up to the ceiling. So poor Case probably had to sign his autograph a lot more than he did during his career over the past few months.
I want to ask you about the no-look goal that Connor McDavid scored in the exhibition game against David Riddick. And it looks great on television. The replays and the sizzle reels are awesome.
Dirty.
Does David Riddick even know that Connor McDavid isn't looking at him? Or is David Riddick looking at the puck?
You know what? I think that's a question for David Riddick, and I actually haven't checked.
What would you be looking at?
Reels. I'm more of a puck tracker.
Me too.
Now, here's
I think everybody would be, wouldn't they? When he gets in that close? Nobody's looking at the...
you know what? No, I saw this question asked on Twitter. Actually, I got tagged in it and asked Eddie Lack, and what are you looking at? And Eddie actually said you're looking for all kinds of visual cues, hands, eyes, all those things, as opposed to just locking in on the puck. Now, I was just going to say, I'm a puck tracker, so my head would be down on the puck. It's kind of a philosophy that I've learned, and it's helped me. But at the same time, if McDavid snaps it quickly 5-hole from there, I'm also letting it go between my legs. Like, let's not... And if we're talking about me, he could probably be another 20 feet
And
away.
the way he released it was like he was hiding, he was showing past the whole way on the blade, not just with the eyes. So
even if you were straight tracking on the puck, there's no guarantee you could make that save. That because he hit it everywhere. The deception, great point. The deception was in the hands. The deception was in the eyes. The deception was in the stick blade. Everything showed past. So I'm not sure it mattered, but I thought it was interesting to see Eddie's answer. And we've had this conversation with guys around the league, like Ryan Miller, on the importance of anticipation. I remember writing that story for Unmasked must be 3-4 years ago. And basically, Ryan, to paraphrase, and maybe we'll get him on to talk a little more about this, as I know he's probably sitting at home wishing he was playing right now. But yeah, the theory was just basically that, like, if you haven't picked up on the visual cues, especially from that range, and if you haven't absorbed all these other visual cues, and if you're not actually moving before that shot is released from that range, you're dead. So I do think a lot of goalies are looking for more than just the puck, and yet there's this sort of yin and yang philosophy or different philosophies on it from that range. I thought Riddich's head was down on it pretty nicely, and so maybe it didn't matter what he was looking at because it was hidden so well with all the other elements. But a lot of guys in the NHL will tell you, if you're just looking at the puck, you don't have a chance from that range.
Like when he gets in that tight, don't you have to zero in on the puck?
Maybe. And you know what I think the beauty is? The answers are probably going to differ depending on each guy.
Yeah.
Like, there are tracking guys and there are read guys. The guys like Braden Holtby, who have learned a lot of the new tracking stuff and still feel like they have to be up and play out of their perimeter a lot. And in Holtby's case, his perimeter, based on testing by sort of eye doctors, his perimeter is so off the charts, you understand why. So it's a fascinating, again, it's like the gear. There's no one answer.
Right.
That's what makes this position so awesome. There's never really one absolute answer to everything. There's always little plays and variants.
Feature interview coming up, Turning Pro, the advice of Eli Wilson goaltending, and Dylan Ferguson, who's just recently, the last couple of years, turned pro, became a pro way before we ever thought he would be in that wild opening year with the Vegas Golden Knights. But before we get into the feature interview, what have you heard about the sight lines in the two hub arenas, Scotiabank Arena and Rogers Place, and do you think it affected the goaltenders at all in the initial go around, or did they have to get used to things a little bit because just the tarps on in the rink?
Well, okay, so this is an interesting one. Now, and it's funny because I actually asked Carter Hart the question on a Zoom call the day before they played, and I was just curious whether he'd gone in there and looked around and what he thought about how that would affect it. And actually, I saw it referenced on the broadcast the next day, his answer that he had.
Look at you influencing people.
I know we're trying to go big time here, Darren. The whole Zoom thing means I could get on these calls with all these goalies. I don't have to wait for them to come to Vancouver. The funny part, though, is I have to be careful what I ask because the NHL people won't call on me if I hop on there and ask a bunch of gear questions. So the funny part about that one, Darren, is I used the noggin. I asked him the sightline question, which ends up on the NBC broadcast the next day, his answer. But I was actually just using the sightline question so I could follow up with a text message saying, I really wanted to ask you about gear. And that's how I found out about that's when we started going back and forth on the whole practice stuff. So wily veteran, that's what I'd like to see. When I'm surfing, I'm just old. When I'm playing the media game, I'm a wily veteran, and it worked out.
What was the answer, though?
The answer was it was something that concerned him. He thought about it, and yet the puck is on the ice. Again, for sort of head down and in front tracking guys, a lot of them look at the guys who have their head up, and they're like, "What?" You're like, "Are you checking out a girl in the third row? Because she's not there anymore." So it's a tarp. It is interesting. The background, you talk to pros, it does matter a little bit, but for the most part, the puck in the game is played from a goalie visual perspective below the dashers. Outside of like a high arcing dump in from the other end or something like that, it doesn't really get up into the crowd that much. So I don't think it's going to be a huge effect. Full disclosure, I haven't had a chance to go through the Zoom call answers of other guys that have now played, and I'm expecting a few of them probably have answers to this. So I'll see if I can dig a few up in the meantime. But right now, I don't think it's going to be that big a deal, but certainly it's something that's on the minds of the goaltenders going into their first games.
Check it out. We'll follow up on In Goal Magazine, Twitter account, Instagram, some great content via In Goal, especially about Carter Hart and the whole blocker thing. I was tracking that and wondering how you got that, and that was solid work on the Instagram account. So the feature interview this week deals with turning pro, and this is David Hutchison catching up with Eli Wilson, who thankfully is running his camps. Things have progressed to the point where we're allowed to have some camps going. So Eli Wilson goaltending, and a longtime goaltending coach, National Hockey League professional goaltender juniors. He's watched goaltenders come up through the ranks, and a lot of the conversation about how he's tutored and mentored goaltenders, and then having a goaltender like Dylan Ferguson right there, who's gone through this in the last couple of years in this journey from being drafted to turning pro. So here is David Hutchison with Eli Wilson and Dylan Ferguson on In Goal Radio, the podcast.
So we're at the Eli Wilson Goaltending Prospects Camp in Edmonton, and I'm here. Eli is here, obviously, because it's his camp, and he's hosting 24 fantastic young goaltenders here, and one of them is a longtime friend of In Goal, Dylan Ferguson. And we thought we would have a conversation today just about developing goaltenders. Dylan's had that experience of going from Bantam all the way up to the NHL in a relatively short number of years recently. Eli's obviously developed all kinds of goaltenders for the Western Hockey League, for the National Hockey League. and has been a coach at the National Hockey League level. And we're here in a place which is trying to develop young goaltenders. We've got everything from a couple of high-end Bantam draft hopefuls to a bunch of Western Hockey League goaltenders here who are hoping to be in the National Hockey League one day, as Dylan has done. And so we thought we'd have a conversation about development. So why don't we start, Dylan, back in Bantam hockey? What was that process like going from Bantam to the Western Hockey League? What did you have to do you think to sort of get noticed? And then what did you find was changed in your life as you went from minor hockey to what's almost professional hockey?
Yeah, I think I'm thinking back to like my first year at Bantam. I was in Nanaimo playing Tier 3 Bantam hockey. And, after that year, I had a pretty good year. I got called up a couple times, but I thought I felt like I could do more. So I got a great opportunity to go to Notre Dame. And I was there for 3 years. And in that Bantam year, we had a strong team, guys like Dylan Dubé and guys like that. So, I think when you play on a team at a high level like that, you just really have to take advantage of it and be in the moment.
So a couple things I would pull out of that. One is that you were playing Tier 3 Bantam. And so nobody should be freaking out if they are playing Tier 3 Bantam. And Eli, we've had some conversations about what it takes to make that jump. And a lot of parents freak out. Am I on the right team at Atom Hockey? Did I go to the right tournament in Pee Wee? But you've told me before, it sort of comes down to just a couple of small things.
Well, and I think one of the biggest things is guys think about so many other things that surround hockey and that are around hockey rather than the game itself and getting better at the game itself. And all those things that are happening outside the game are basically a distraction to your performance and your development. I found that over the years, the guys that have been able to persevere and push through have really just focused on improvement and performance, not worrying about, did I make this team or didn't I make the team? They take it in stride and they push and they don't get distracted by those type of things, and those type of things just pull you back.
Of course, not everybody has to be drafted. We're talking about drafts, but you've obviously played with some guys who didn't go through the Bantam draft or didn't get selected. And so any thoughts for youngsters on that level?
Yeah, I think right away I look at a guy who was my goalie partner, Connor Ingram. He didn't get drafted in the WHL. And, obviously he's turned around and become a very good goaltender. And, he represented our country. And I learned a lot from him as well. And he's a very simple guy. He keeps things straightforward, and I think a lot of people can learn from that.
Yeah. Eli?
Like my thoughts on the draft is those scouts have a real difficult job to do in picking goalies at that, or just players in general. We're talking about the Bantam draft for the Western Hockey League. It's very, very difficult. I would think without looking at statistics, I would think that it would be 50-50 of the players that actually get to play on the teams, goaltender-wise, that are drafted to the ones that aren't drafted. So to get discouraged because you weren't drafted in the Bantam draft is not something that's conducive to improvement or making you a better goalie or even enjoying the game. I think people had so much pressure, both from a parenting standpoint and a goaltending standpoint, about the draft. That it causes so much pressure on that year, on that young goaltender, that may be the thing that stops him from performing at the level that he can to perform. Because we always got to remember, goaltenders that are good and goaltenders that play well aren't always exactly the same thing. So,
tell me more about that.
Well, I think there's goaltenders with skill, ability, and all the things that it takes, and they don't play well. And a lot of that has to do with pressure and not being able to stay in the moment and not being able to manage your emotions and channel your energy to productive things. And, we've seen it, more and more now. You see a goaltender on the ice that has all the skills and abilities and all the tools to be a top level goaltender, in your opinion, from a hockey school perspective or a practice perspective. And then you go and watch a game and there's a goaltender at the other end with half the skill and half the ability that can outplay that goaltender. It's often what's happening in the head and those kind of things. So I've been around the Bantam draft for 20 seasons, and I've seen a lot of kids get drafted, and I've seen a lot of kids heartbroken and not get drafted. I've seen a lot of kids that get drafted a few years later not playing the game at all, and I've seen kids that weren't drafted still playing the game as adults and being able to make a very good living at it. The Bantam draft year, it's a very, very stressful year for goalies and goalie families and hockey across the board. But it's one of those things too that makes the game real exciting. And you have to go through it and you have to be prepared for the good and the bad in the game. I think there's so many guys that prepare for all the good stuff. And when things don't go well, they're not prepared for it. And it's not looking at things from a negative standpoint. It's like being prepared for both, whether it goes one way or the other, and always moving forward. And there's a saying that, you need to learn how to lose before you're going to know how to win. And there's so many ways someone can look at that, but it's one of those things that to me, it really, really makes sense.
And not to dwell too long here on Bantam, because that's just the beginning, right? Like you said, 3 years at Notre Dame.
Yeah. It was a short 3 years as well. I had quite a bit of fun there.
So what's it take to go from draft pick to actually starting in the Western Hockey League?
Notre Dame, they really just kind of feeding off what Eli said. They really taught you how to be a person more, as well as a goalie, and just kind of stay in the moment and, keep hockey away from your outside life. And I think that was something that I held on to. And I think my advice for young goalies trying to do the same thing is, when you're away from the rink, keep your goals, keep your focus, but don't lose it as well.
That's an interesting point you brought up, because Eli, you've talked about that too, where once you get to junior hockey, not everybody's on the same path. Not everybody even has the same goal, even if they think they sort of do. Talk to me a little bit about that advice for junior players, or as you move up.
Well, I think guys get to junior hockey and not everyone plays hockey for the same reason. Some players are looking to do it as a career and a profession. Some players love it because of the camaraderie and they enjoy that part of it. Some guys play it because they're just good at it. Some players play it because they feel a lot of pressure from their families. There's a number of reasons why guys are playing, and not everyone, when you get to junior hockey, is as serious as sometimes from the outside world people think, and some people might not have the same goals in life. So some guys are moving in one direction, but it's just if you're in the game to move on to the next level and play at the best of your ability, you really have to be smart about that and make good decisions and take care of yourself. And one thing that's important, I think, and I talk to lots of young goaltenders about this, is to role model some of the very best and see what they were doing when they were playing at those levels, and see how serious and focused they were. And I always tell kids, like, when you're playing junior hockey, you want to be the guy that they're talking about in 10 years. I remember when Dylan Ferguson played on the Kamloops Blazers, and he was first star every night, and he was the hardest worker in practice, and he was super serious and super competitive. And you want to create that, and you can almost push yourself forward 10 years and look back and self-create that. And you can, kind of create a little bit of a legend yourself while you're there, and you can take those actions and do that. And there's so many examples and so many great athletes in sports that you hear the stories about, and those are the guys that you want to follow and do the type of things that they were doing at that level.
Great advice. How do you get to that point, Dylan, when you arrive what were you, 15, 16 at your first camp? What's that like, and who becomes an influence on you?
Yeah, this is just, it's kind of cool. I feel like I'm learning and teaching at the same time here.
Yeah.
No, I came into the WHL when I was 17. I didn't make it my 16-year-old year, but for me, that was almost a challenge because I didn't have as much time, I felt like, to prove myself in that league, especially with the goalie partner I had at the time, who was a great goalie, Connor Ingram again. I think, just like Eli said, it takes a lot of hard work and determination, and you got to keep that focus, and you got to think about what people want to think about you, kind of thing. And I remember just thinking back, kind of flashbacks of me just sitting there and this is who I want to be in this league and this is where I want to go with it. And, I think you got to set a goal for yourself and really stick to it.
And who were the influences on you in that first season or even the season before when you're in camp for the first time? Who'd you look to?
I kind of looked to the older guys right away. I got kind of lucky with the 20-year-olds I had. They were all hardworking guys. They didn't mess around too much off the ice. And, I had a great goalie coach there as well in Dan De Palma, who, kind of took me under his wing and I think saw something in me and helped me realize that as well. And I'm grateful for that. I had my family behind my back too, who they're always pushing me to be better in a really nice and respectful way. So, I think you just got to be grateful for those that want to help you and just keep your mind straight.
And a little plug for Dan. That's great. We've actually got a presentation of his from the Western Hockey League Goaltending Symposium. Will be on for all our members at InGoal at some point. Okay, so 17. So you got 1 year to prove yourself for the National Hockey League draft. What's that year like?
My first year I didn't play too much. One thing Dan told me is he knew I wasn't going to play much, so every single practice I was on, I had to take like my game. Because there would be 2 months where I haven't played a game, and then I get put in against one of the best teams in the league and expected to perform. And I actually liked that. Like I felt like I was prepared every time I'd go on the ice, and okay, I'm getting better. I'm preparing for this. And I think that's just the biggest thing.
What kind of feedback do you give a goaltender in that situation, Eli? How do you keep them on top of things? Do you evaluate practices as if they're games? Sit down, talk about them? How do you keep them?
It's a challenge for a goaltender that's sitting on the bench when they have an older goaltender and junior playing in front of them and they're playing all the games. And one of the biggest things that I stress to young goaltenders is to avoid frustration. Frustration does one thing, and it makes you perform poorly. And it's about managing emotions, and some of those emotions are to push through what other people don't realize if they haven't been in your situation are very, very difficult times. But you have an opportunity to not play games and practice like they're your games. So that's a really good point that Dylan made, and I've heard lots of guys look at it that way. But you can't look at it as a negative that I'm not playing. You look at it as a positive and get an opportunity to practice a lot and really measure yourself on a daily basis based on how you're performing on a daily basis in practice and how much you're improving. And I don't think it's a huge thing to not play a ton of games as a young goalie in the Western Hockey League. I know they say, the best thing is to play all the time. You can get really good in a practice in the Western Hockey League, and when you get an opportunity, it's your time to perform. You can't be sulking and worrying about I'm not playing, because sooner or later you're going to be playing. And if you put your mind in a negative way or frustrated way, the chances of you being able to perform when you do get that chance are not very good at all.
We didn't say this at the outset, but you're the goaltending coach for the Tri-City Americans in the Western Hockey League, and you sort of had the same situation this year, didn't you? You had a top 20-year-old, and then you had a young prospect as well. So do you guys sit down after games or after practices to evaluate his performance? How do you keep a young prospect going? Talon Boyko being the prospect.
We talk about the same things that we're talking about now. I mean, it's about improving and getting better. And an NHL scouts have called me on numerous goalies in the Western Hockey League over the years that I've been involved, and they never ask me how good the goalie is, because they always have an opinion on how good the goalie is. One question that comes up a lot is how much they're improving. And I don't really care how good you are right now. I care about how much you're improving, because if you continue to improve and work at your game every day, you're going to push it as far as possible anyways. For me to predict where you're going to end up that's not my job. My job with that goaltender is to make them better every single day. And things sometimes are tough with young goaltenders, and it can be emotional, and it can be frustrating, and it can be all of those things. But you need to make it about improvement and give them examples and be in their corner and push them when they really need to be pushed. And there's a lot of situations with young goalies where they have a coach that might not communicates to the team great and does a really good job. There's a chance where, you have a lot of guys that you're dealing with that are in the lineup on a regular basis that as a head coach, they're more your priority, and anyone would handle it that way. So as a goalie coach, you've only got 2 guys to worry about or not worried about, but work with. And if one guy's playing all the games, you support him and keep him going, and the other guy's not, you got to support him and keep him going with that as well. So it can be tough, and if you're mentally tough enough and you're prepared to do it, and you're honestly prepared to do it, you'll be fine. And if you think if you're a little bit soft and not able to push through, not being able to play for a month or 2, or not being able to bounce back, it's going to be really difficult. There's a lot of good goalies out there, and sometimes it's a eat you up and spit you out league if you're not mentally strong enough to work through it.
Fergie, you obviously were. You're in that tough situation, then ultimately heard your name called at the NHL draft. Just tell me a little bit more, though, about that 17-year-old season and how that works. I mean, I know in some cases a scout will be in the building and will want to talk to you after the game, or maybe you get some questionnaires you have to fill out ahead of the draft, or is it all in a vacuum sometimes? How did it work for you?
Yeah, so I think just going back to what I said about taking my practices like games was a big thing for me. I didn't know when I was going to get my opportunity, but I knew I was going to get it. And, I still remember the GM at the time came down and said, okay, the starter's going to World Juniors. We're going on a road trip. It's your time. And that's what I said to him. And, right in that moment, I just remembered all the work I put in. This is what I wanted, and I'm getting it now. So let's go make the best of it. And, I made myself proud as well. And, I worked really hard for that. And, the scouts coming in was a cool thing. I remember that. And, I didn't try to let it get to me at the time. It was exciting for sure. But at the end of the day, I had to go and play games while he was away. And, I felt like I did that. And yeah, it really comes down to me being focused and setting goals and keeping my head straight.
And leading into the draft, did you have any feeling for what might happen?
I mean, it's hard not to. I set my alarm for 8 a.m. and I think I woke up at 6 that day and went over to the house and made myself breakfast. I didn't really know what to expect. It was, I have people telling me this, people telling me that, me looking at this and that. But, at the end of the day, you don't know what's going to happen. And that's why I think I just stayed in the moment. And, when my name got called, it was a great feeling. And it's something I'll never forget.
Was that a total surprise, or did you get a hint before?
It was, so the day before, I think I got ranked at like 80 or something. And then I dropped down obviously to, I think it was like 196. But for me, it didn't matter. Even to just get your name called in that draft was a dream come true for me. And, I think maybe even being picked later than I maybe anticipated was just the most motivation I've had. And I used that to keep going.
And then you became like the number one fan of one team and then very quickly changed your allegiances to another one. What happened there? Yeah,
it's a pretty crazy story, actually. So Dallas, I got drafted by Dallas, and their camp was a week later than Vegas's camp. So me and a couple of my buddies booked a fishing trip, actually, just up island in Campbell River. And so we were getting packed up to go there. We were at Cabela's, and I get a call from a Texas number, and I answer. It was the GM of the Dallas Stars just congratulating me on the draft. And then 30 seconds later, he told me I got traded to Vegas. So I missed the first day of Vegas camp. And that night I got a ferry to Vancouver. I had a flight the next morning, and I was on the ice that day in Vegas. And it all happened so fast, and it was quite the whirlwind, and I'm happy I could go there and perform the way I did.
Wow. Talk about seizing your opportunity. We'll get to that in a minute. And thankfully for you, that move happened. Can you talk to us a little bit about how the game changes as a goaltender from, let's not jump too far back to Bantam, but that's part of it. And then what's it look like for you in the Western League? And then, gosh, your first NHL camp too.
Yeah, I think there's similarities and differences. I mean, obviously, in Bantam, everyone's around the same age. And then when you get into the WHL, I was a young 16, 17-year-old kid playing with 20-year-olds. And I think the biggest thing for me is I just wanted to learn the way of the game, the way of the league, how it operated. And then, when I got that call up, I was at Boston Pizza after the game with a few of the guys, just enjoying a meal.
This is the call up to the NHL team.
NHL, yeah.
During the season.
During the season, about halfway through. And, my phone started buzzing and I looked down and it was Vegas calling, and I was watching the game. I saw Oscar Dance go down, and, a part of me couldn't believe what was happening. But that's, as I wasn't really focused on that, I just wanted to keep playing and be in the moment. And sometimes we get opportunities like this, and, I went there and worked my bag off. Like, I kept my head down and just worked. And, I think that's the biggest thing, even going into the WHL. The biggest thing in each league is you just got to keep your head down and work and learn, and just keep moving forward.
What does that mean, Eli? Keeping your head down and working at each level? Because I think probably 95% of the goaltenders out there probably think they work hard. What does it really mean to be that hardworking goaltender when you get there?
Well, one of the things that's come up and we've been talking a little bit about is, you got to push, you got to work hard, and you got to be focused, and you got to learn the game. But, I think we kind of forgot one of the most important things is that you have to have fun and enjoy it. When you're not playing, and we're going back a little bit, when you're not playing for a month in the Western Hockey League as a young goaltender, and you start not to have fun, it becomes a very difficult thing. So you really need to make sure that you're really enjoying what you're doing. Even though there are going to be challenging times, you need to enjoy it. So I think that's really important for young goaltenders, and goaltenders are a little bit older. Like we're talking about the Bantam draft, it could be super stressful. But one of my pieces of advice is you need to really enjoy that season and not get stressed out about it or too worried about it. Just enjoy it, because you're only going to get that opportunity once, because it's limited to second-year Bantam players only. You don't get that chance again. So enjoying the process is very important. And when you enjoy it, the hard work is enjoyable. And I think that hard work, it needs to be detailed hard work. It needs to be hard work with a purpose. And goaltending is such a focus position. You can't just be hardworking and push yourself physically as hard as you can. Although that's part of it, it needs to be done with detail and purpose, which I think is sort of answering your question of what that looks like. Doing things right, doing things consistently, all the things that we do every day to try and be better. That's part of working hard.
Berkey, what's hard work to you?
I think Eli nailed it right on the head, honestly. I think I really liked when he said that, when hard work becomes enjoyable. And I think, again, going back to the WHL in my first year, it really did become enjoyable for me. And I think when my opportunity came, I had no doubt in my mind I would have been just fine because of that. And, I don't really have much else to say about that. I really think he covered all of it. But yeah.
What did you see when you got to the National Hockey League?
That was I was in shock for sure. I was on a red-eye flight, got to New York at 6 a.m. and my first time on NHL ice was in Madison Square Garden. So that's something, again, I'll never forget. And I think being there just motivated me that much more to get back there. It's even talking about it now, I'm kind of still speechless about it. But
were you there for game day skate or straight to warm up?
So I got there around 8 a.m. I was on the ice for warm up. I was the backup goalie. So it's amazing how hard everyone works there too. Like again, what Eli said, they all enjoy themselves. They're all having fun, but when they're on the ice, they still have fun, but you can tell their determination and hard work and their consistency. It's obvious.
First shot, whether it's the first shots you faced in your first Western League camp or in your first NHL camp or gosh, that first warm up, what's going through your head?
A lot. I was pumped up. I was fired up, and maybe a little too fired up. You know, I didn't really know what to expect, but a part of me just wanted to calm down and trust my game, trust everything I've done to get to this point. And, you know, after the first day or two, you know, I really think I did that. And, you know, I listened to what the goalie coach there had to say, and
Dave Pryor.
Dave Pryor. Yeah. And, yeah, he's a great guy. He kind of took me under his wing, understood the whole situation, and I think saw something.
What's he say to you in that first conversation? If you could remember.
I don't think he said much. Just kind of like, welcome. This is what we do here. This is who we are.
To make you feel at home?
Yeah. The team was great. There wasn't one guy that made me feel uncomfortable. You know, they were all nice. And, yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm really speechless about it, because just the way they all treated, and you don't know what to expect when you get to that stage. And, you know, I just tried to stay in the moment, understand where I was, and take it all in if I could.
When the first shots are coming, are you thinking, all right, I play with some guys who can shoot hard and I'm good? Or is it, oh my gosh, I can't believe every guy can shoot harder than the guy in the Western League? What are you thinking? How do you evaluate it?
They definitely shoot harder.
Yeah.
And they can shoot more precisely.
Yeah.
But, you know, the summer before, I'd trained with some NHL players, just getting on the ice with them.
Nice.
Guys like Matt Irwin in Victoria,
Right.
and Tyson Bailey. And, yeah, I mean, I kind of knew what to expect, but yeah, again, I just kind of let myself get into a zone where I wasn't really thinking and do the best I could.
Oh, that's a great point you've brought up. I think even today, Eli, if you're going to be a goaltender, you got to be able to go out there and stop thinking about everything, keeping it simple.
Well, I think too is like your expectations of yourself is another thing that's super important. We have so many things they're important as goalies, and simplifying a thing that is kind of complex in some senses is challenging. But I think expectations of yourself to stop pucks, and doesn't matter who's shooting at you, the mindset going in. It's not, oh, I'm facing an NHL shooter. It's like, this guy is shooting on me. I'm ready for the puck. I don't care what happens. And if you have that mindset, you're giving yourself a way better chance just looking at it that way than what's this gonna be like. Like, it's, you know, you're just ready.
Did you experience anything similar? I mean, this is a bit of a crazy situation where you're going junior to NHL in one night, but as a coach in the National Hockey League, what was the sort of a similar experience you've been through with an athlete?
You know, I've been there for a goalie that's played his first NHL game, and this is a really interesting story because 10 years prior to that is when I started coaching. That goaltender happened to be one of my first students.
Okay.
And 10 years later, he was playing in Binghamton and I was coaching in Ottawa, and we called him up.
Who is it we're talking
Mike
about?
Brodeur.
Okay.
And we called him up, and you know, our general manager and our coach didn't feel that he could play in the NHL, and watching him in practice, and we had a plan to get to start him against New Jersey, and it was the general manager at the time says we're not doing it now. The general manager actually made the coaching staff not do that because he felt that we were going to get too much attention on it playing Brodeur against Brodeur, and he felt that Mike wasn't an NHL goalie already. So we were in New Jersey, and the first puck on net was a rim. It wasn't on him; he was on the bench, but he was supposed to play that game. It was a rim. It hit a stanchion and went right in the back of the net as our goaltender was behind the net, and things went from bad to worse. And it sort of got to the point where we kind of got upset as an organization, and we're going to play him the next game no matter what happened against Minnesota. So he was playing, and I told him when he was 16 years old or 17 years old, if he works hard enough, he could play in the NHL, and I had an opportunity to watch him play against Minnesota in his first game in the NHL and get first star in that game. So, kind of a similar thing where I knew the kid for a long period of time, and he was a little bit older and not probably expected to make the NHL at that time. So, he's just thrown into the fire and did a great job for us in that game.
How did you get him ready for that? when he first arrives?
When called him up, it was just a week of practice or whatever the case was. I can't remember. For sure, it was due to an injury and maybe lack of performance by somebody. But he was called up and just basically did the same thing. And practices are going to be hard. We're going to work as hard as we possibly can. And I remember having the conversation with him. He goes, like, I thought this league was going to be good, but I didn't think it was going to be this good. I said, you better be ready. Like, just, and then we just went to the basics and all that kind of stuff. But I knew he was a gamer. When he get an opportunity, he would perform.
So you laughed there as you were hearing that. That obviously resonates with you a little bit, Fergie.
Yeah. It's kind of cool hearing stories like that, because I'm kind of sitting here remembering what I went through. And I myself got an opportunity to go into a game, not start one. But, again, it was kind of a shortened edition of what I had to go through the WHL, where I just kept my head down and worked and wait for an opportunity. And that opportunity came, and I did my best to make the most of it at the time.
How can you describe to somebody, because we've heard, yes, they shoot harder. Yes, they're more accurate. We've heard other people tell us, you know what, making that jump from the American League to the NHL, the game almost gets easier. So could you describe for us what the different levels are like at all?
I think the biggest thing for me was just the speed of the game, how fast things happened, and it doesn't give you a lot of time to think. You're not supposed to be thinking while you're in there anyway. But like when I got in there and I saw Connor McDavid coming down from the other end, he's in your face in 3 seconds. Things are happening quick, and that's really just where all your training, all that hard work kind of just has to take over. And you just, okay, this is where I am. This is what I got to do, and I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. But the difference through the leagues for me is it's kind of a tough question, because I think I'm going to say structure and just the speed of the game is the biggest difference.
Mm-hmm. So speed of the game makes it harder for you. Does the structure make it easier for you?
I think the speed actually,
and I'm not asking you to say, oh, the NHL's easy, because it's not.
No, it's not. It's not. It's the best league in the world,
of course. But we're just trying to give people a concept of what you're experiencing there.
I think it makes it easier to read some things. There's not so many unexpected things that are going to happen. I think obviously the players at that level they're all the best, and they know their job and they know what to do. And I think, the structure of the game definitely, I wouldn't say it makes it easier, but it makes it smoother, if that makes sense. The like reads coming off the wall, you can see it's hard to explain, but that's really all I got.
Well, what's it like when you go back to the Western League then?
That was a big difference, and that was something I definitely thought about on that flight back, because the day I got back, I started against the Vancouver Giants that night. Don Hay was the coach at the time. He gave me a call and said, "Yeah, you're going tonight." And I said, "Okay, let's go."
Mm-hmm.
Obviously my confidence was high, and I think like I knew how to play in that league, and that was my belief going into that game. We won that game, I think 3-2. I remember those few couple days, and
Is the game in slow motion?
Not really.
Not really.
Honestly, no. It was kind of like I just jumped back right in, and nothing really happened at that point. And after the game, I kind of took my time to think about it, and it's crazy how fast things can happen. But I think something I learned being there even more was just that you just got to trust yourself and trust all that work you've been through. And
Eli, what do you have to tell us about the differences between the leagues? You've coached at all these levels, and what do you see?
I really see it as the same game. I spent time working in the American Hockey League, and basically at the same time as working in the NHL. I had both positions as American League coach and NHL coach. So, the guys that were successful goaltenders in the American Hockey League were the same to me as the goaltenders that were successful in the National Hockey League. They went into work every day. They expected results from themselves, and they worked. The game itself, they talk about the American Hockey League being more broken plays and all that type of stuff, but you got to remember the worst player in the American Hockey League or on an American Hockey League team is as good as the best player in the league that you just came from. So it's not that sloppy. Same thing when you go to the National Hockey League, the best player in the American Hockey League isn't as good as the bottom player in a lot of situations. So the game itself is a great level of hockey. Major junior, major college, East Coast Hockey League, American Hockey League, NHL, all of it is good hockey. And, I think really the difference is when you go up to the National Hockey League, there's some guys that put the league on a pedestal and you can't because you can't achieve it. But if you expect that you're going to go there and perform well and play well, then you give yourself a very good chance of being a good goaltender on that level. So a lot of it comes down to the mental side and not necessarily how you prepare or how you do those things, but basically how you see it. Is this something that hopefully I can play in the NHL, or is this something, if I work hard enough, I'm going to give myself a chance? Or is your mindset, I'm going to play in the NHL? And I've seen it for a long time that the guys that get there and play well and have careers, they didn't put it up here. It was just on the way to where they were going, and they achieve it. They expect to be there.
You're nodding a lot, Fergie. It's all resonating.
Yeah, no, I'm agreeing with a lot of the things that he's saying, and resonating is a good way to put it as well. And he's right about all of that. And in my mind, even now, I see myself playing in the NHL, and that's, I think, how he said putting it on a pedestal is a really good point, where you kind of got to put yourself on a pedestal as well if you think that's on a pedestal, and you just really got to be in the moment and focus on what you're doing and getting better. And
so you go back to junior, and boys probably want you to pick up the tab on a few pizzas every now and then because you made a few bucks, right?
Yeah, you're not wrong.
What's the relationship between you and your NHL team while you're in junior?
It was good. I think I got a pretty cool opportunity to sign out of camp and after the trade and all that. And, for me, that showed me that they had a lot of belief in me as a young prospect coming through, and, everything that happened. And, I stayed in touch with Dave quite a bit. We'd talk about games. He never made a trip down. He just couldn't with the scheduling and everything. It's crazy first year, obviously, for them. But
was that just him checking in every now and then? How's it going? And
same with the assistant goalie coach at the time, Mike Rosati. He'd check in a little more, and I got a great relationship with him as well. And the biggest thing that they told me is just they really wanted to emphasize the way that they wanted me to play. And when I figured out the median of that and still having fun the way I can play, and I think it was a perfect mix for that year, and it was a lot of fun.
Can you tell us what that message from them was in terms of how they wanted you to play?
Yeah, when I got into the league, I felt like I was Jonathan Quick kind of thing, where I was just sliding all over the place trying to make these saves, and they just wanted me to calm down a bit. And even what Eli teaches here at these camps is let the puck come to you, and be patient. Patience was a big thing for them, and I think that took my game to the next level. Just trusting my hands, trusting my eyes, and I think that was a huge thing for my career.
I'm gonna bet Dan was telling you to do the same thing before that, though.
Yeah.
So is it having that glimpse of what it's like at the next level sort of convince you as a youngster, okay, maybe these guys are right? Meaning seeing how much tougher the game is when you get up there, and you might be, okay, I can't chase it because I think I put a lot of trust in them. They're there for a reason, and I wanted to be the goalie that, obviously you want to be the goalie that your coach wants you to be, and I really tried to input that into my game, and I felt like, again, I found a good median where I was making everyone happy, and that was a big thing for me, and including myself. I felt my game was at a good level, and it's just the way it went. Eli, you've been on both sides of the coin here. How's that relationship work between the NHL staff and the junior staff and the development of a young goaltender?
Well, when I was coaching the National Hockey League, we drafted Robin Leonard, who this was before they banned Europeans and all kinds of stuff in the CHL, and we actually drafted him before he got drafted to the OHL. So he was drafted to the NHL before he was drafted to the OHL, and then he went to the Sioux. And I would keep it right when I started working with him, he was really receptive to the way I wanted him to play. It was, a lot of things in common. And, I would try and have a conversation with him once a week over the phone. And, not that they would come. I couldn't travel outside of really my responsibilities with the team to see him. Although, he came, Ottawa played at home on Sundays at 67. So I had an opportunity to see him basically play once in junior hockey, live, lots of times on video. So, the relationship is basically just keeping in touch and creating a little bit of relationship with the goalie and finding out where he is. And, sometimes guys have questions and you're there to answer the questions and give them some advice and some encouragement. And
in terms of with their junior coaches as well, how do you manage that? Because are you on the same page in terms of development needs?
Well, I would have never talked to his goalie coach. I would have just kept the conversation between him and I wouldn't give him too much advice from a phone call unless, he asked something. And, from a technical standpoint, he was obviously a dynamite junior goaltender and he was really good. So I didn't feel that he needed a ton of help and support other than what they were doing there. So I didn't feel that I needed to step up and start working with him from afar.
Did your team do that beyond the goaltending experience? I mean, are you getting training advice from the team? Do they have expectations for you that they're sharing with you?
Just kind of remembering back, Rosati did come a few times, and him and Dan actually had a pretty good relationship. So I'd hear a lot of stuff through Dan from Mike, and just check-ins and things like that. And how am I playing? Is he improving on this? And I think it was a good little relationship that they had there that helped me and Dan to make me the goalie that they wanted me to be, essentially, as well as his Dan's. He has a little bit of different way of coaching, but not too much. It's all the kind of the same. But I think I got pretty lucky to have that NHL coach to junior coach relationship where there was a good median, and I learned a lot from that.
So now, what's next in terms of development? You've played in the East Coast League for a year. You've had a cup of coffee in the American League as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the next few years look like for you in terms of how are you going to make those steps?
I think, for one, just being at these camps is a big step. I think you got to take a look in the mirror sometimes and really decide what you want to do with some things. And I think it's obvious my year last year in the Coast wasn't the year that I completely wanted to have. And those things happen sometimes. And I think a lot of the things that I had engraved in my head kind of got away from me a bit. And it was a little too late when I realized it. This pandemic and everything started. I started winning games, started playing more. And, it's, you can't take anything for granted, and you got to stay in the moment and learn from your mistakes. And I think the little saying there, you gotta lose to learn how to win. And, that was something that I actually saw quite a few months ago when I kind of realized and got out of that little bit of a slump I was going through. And, since then I've been really determined to get back on that Dylan Ferguson kind of goaltending. So it's good.
Yeah. And kudos to you. Cause I know we see a lot of pros who are sort of on their own and might be out playing a bit of shinny with the boys or whatever, and hoping that even at the professional level, that still happens. And you've taken charge and you're working with Eli and some other coaches just to try and raise your game as best you can on your own. Cause I think you told us tonight, Eli, your best goalie coach is
yourself. Well, I just think that if you got to know the position, understand the position, and be able to watch video and see what you're doing right or wrong, or what you could be doing better or more efficient. And that comes from having a real clear understanding of the game and of your own game. And sometimes you're there on your own, and you need to, have some of those answers and look at it and make those decisions yourself. And your goalie coach can't make saves for you. You got to make them for yourself, and you got to buy into it and push forward with that. I find guys that are good prospects and good goalies, and they get to a point where they think, I'm a good goalie, this is going to work. No, you're a good goalie and you have to work. And I've seen that, I'm not going to say dozens, but I'm going to say a dozen times of guys that had an opportunity to play in the National Hockey League and they quit moving forward, and it stopped them from being a player. You gotta buy into the idea that you got to work as long and as hard as possible, and it works out. Can't think I'm good, it's all on the right track. If I just keep this the way it is and hold this, it's going to happen, because it can for some goaltenders, and it has. But for most of us, we need to continue to work, continue to get better, and continue to really grind at it to accomplish our goals.
And that's great advice, because whether it's Pee Wee hockey in Nanaimo or the East Coast League or the American League, there's a lot of time you're on your own. I think a lot of parents sort of expect there to be a goaltending coach holding your hand all the way through, but that's not the case, is it, Dylan?
No. I think in the American League, it's a little different. They have a guy there, but he's not there all the time. And while I was in the Coast, I think I had a goalie coach maybe once every 1 or 2 months. So it's, just going back to Eli said, you got to be your own coach, and that's the best coach you can really have. And what you feed yourself and teach yourself is going to be what you turn into. So yeah.
How do you be your own coach?
I think you need to understand yourself and the situation you're in. And
are you pouring through video? How do you evaluate what you're doing? Like, what does that look like to be your own coach at your age?
I think video is a big thing. I think when you look at your own video, you see more than you do while you're in there, 100%. And that was something that I really started to pick up more and really focus on. And I'd go through my really good games and my not so good games and figure out why I didn't physically have as well of a game. And I think video for me has been a huge help.
I love that's been an evolution. I've been working with Eli for 7-8 years now, and to see the video come in, and now it's sort of an automatic that a lot of the more driven goaltenders will come off a drill and can I see my video? Can I look at this so I know what I need to do next time they're in the net, right?
I think it's huge. You get the different perspective from the camera and have a chance to see. A lot of people think they're working hard and doing things right until they see it through a camera, and it's not exactly what they thought they looked like. And the video doesn't lie, and it's a chance to evaluate yourself and evaluate yourself in a positive way and see your mistakes and what you could be doing better. And good question about Dylan asking him, how do you coach yourself? It's like you're in the American Hockey League, or you're in the East Coast Hockey League, or junior hockey, and you got an opportunity to go on the ice early and work on some things. That's coaching yourself. A lot of goaltenders that I work with that are really good, they're able to identify when things aren't going well, what's happening. And they're able to do that quickly. Guys that aren't students of the game and don't understand, they don't know why they're not playing well. Things have to start happening a different way for them to turn their game around. You can't be a professional. You need to have very short periods of time where you don't play well and turn that around as quickly as possible. There aren't very many goaltenders in the National Hockey League that have more than 1 or 2 bad games in a row. It can't happen. Those are called not NHL goaltenders. So you need to self-evaluate, and sometimes because what our job is to make saves, which is the funnest thing to do in the game, and not coming up with saves can be probably the hardest thing in the game. So you need to identify why that's happening and make the corrections and the adjustments that you need to in a very quick way to be a professional, because it's about being consistent.
Fergie, I hope I don't put you on the spot too much here, but can you identify those things for you for when it's going well?
There was definitely a time where I couldn't. And, I think that goes back to last year where I didn't have someone there to tell me. And, it's just me being honest where I went through that where I didn't understand why I wasn't playing well. And then it came to a point where I realized, I'm like, okay, I really need to start coaching myself here and turning this around. And again, I really felt like I did that towards the end of the year. And that's something I'm not going to go back to again. And, I feel grateful for myself to be able to learn that and just kind of pick up on it and start working on the little things like getting out early on the ice and watching the video and understanding why this is happening and what am I going to do to change it so when I'm on the ice next game, it's not going to happen again.
Is it a technical thing that makes things tough for you? Is it a mental thing? Is it both?
There's an old saying that goaltending is 90% mental.
Yeah.
And, I think, I don't know if it'd be exactly 90%, maybe a little less, but I think everything's powered by your head and you gotta keep it in a good state. And I think just understand yourself and yeah.
A bit of a tradition here. Woody always ends up with one last question after he's told people we're just about done. But here's my one last question for both of you. We're here with a group of pretty high-end goaltenders, sort of verging on the next step. If this was a camp of Adam and Pee Wee kids, what piece of advice would you give to them today?
That's a good question. I think the biggest thing for me growing up and just learning from so many different people, the same message was just know yourself, know what you want to do, and again, just be in the moment and work hard and have fun doing it. And that's a message that I've been receiving since I was that little 9-year-old kid. And that's something that I'm not going to let go of.
Okay, I'll come back to you on that same one, but I have to ask you because you just tweaked it in my mind. Here's a real one more question.
Okay.
What's it like being in the room with Marc-Andre Fleury?
I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah.
That guy has more fun than anyone I've ever seen play hockey. And I think it goes back to what Eli was saying is he works so hard and has so much fun doing it. And, he was one of the guys that I got up there that just instantly, like, you're starstruck to see him. You don't know what to expect. And a little behind the scenes, but we were out for dinner, the whole team, and I got a little shoe check from Mark. And that's just the type of guy he is. He wants to make you feel comfortable. And
sorry, you tell us what that's about.
Yeah, so he kind of came over to the table I was sitting at. I could tell that it was planned. Like it was, and I was sitting there. I can't remember who I was sitting beside. And everyone started banging their glasses, and everyone looked at me. My face just went like beet red. I didn't know what was going on. And one of the guys beside me said, "Check your shoe, bud." And the whole glob of horseradish on my shoe, and I had to show everyone. And in that moment, it was embarrassing at the time, but I feel like it was something that during that time made me feel like I was part of the team. And he's just that kind of guy. He's a leader in the dressing room, on and off the ice. He has a lot of fun, and he's definitely a guy that I strive to be like.
What a great experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Eli, you're a bit of advice for the Pee-wees and Adams.
Build skill. It's ability, build skill, work as hard as you possibly can and really enjoy it. And follow the system. We make this, being a good goaltender is a lot of fun. Being not a good goaltender is not very much fun. And I think if you follow a system and build the technique and the skill, a person can advance a lot further, a lot quicker than a lot of people think you can if you simplify it. So, all our camps are the same. Whether I'm working with a goaltender, as that's an Adam level hockey or the Western Hockey League, I'm doing a lot of the same things and creating a lot of the same habits because I want my 10-year-olds to play the position the same as I do the 19-year-old kids that we work with. Another thing when we're talking about self-coaching, we have these notebooks at our camps, and if you put all the things together in the system that we teach here in a checklist form, you can watch all your video and you can simply just go through and find out what's working and what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong, and self-evaluate, and then start to get a knack of that and become a real student of the game. So I think that's important for young goaltenders to know, and goaltender, basically any goaltender to follow that system. It's easier to follow a system than, move all over the place. So I think that's important for young goaltenders and old goaltenders.
Perfect. Great note to end on, Eli. Thank you. Best of luck with the rest of the summer of the camps. Fergie, thanks for your time and best of luck in the journey. And we'll see you on the ice again soon, I'm sure.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
That was a cool conversation because you have Hutch, the dad, of a promising young goaltender, Dylan Ferguson, the goaltender that's experienced everything so much and can reflect on his experiences, and the mentor, our Yoda, in Eli Wilson. Eli Wilson goaltending. It was interesting to sort of hear Dylan say exactly what he said so many times through that conversation, referring to what Eli had to summarize.
Well, and we had to put Hutch to work. Some guys just go to the beach on their vacation. Hutch goes to Edmonton and we make him do work while he's there. He's been working the whole time. So thanks to him for making that interview happen while he was there. And you're right, there's a lot of good little insights there that, again, I think there's some insights there that it may be about turning pro, but you can start to develop pro mentality and pro habits early on. Especially coming up into junior, that will benefit you once you get there. So I don't think you necessarily need to be turning pro to benefit from that interview.
And you don't have to be at the highest level. The route is different from the island to Wilcox, Saskatchewan, and the Notre Dame Hounds, and awesome. And I loved how Dylan said, I had fun. And the rest of it kind of came together around that. But having fun is still part of it.
If you've watched him play, he has fun. There's a looseness to his game sometimes, but there's an athleticism and a reactionary element there that you can see why teams were interested in him. You can see what would attract teams. He has that other level that a lot of goalies will have the structure, but maybe not that next piece above it. He has all that pieces above it already.
It's funny how the guys that are really loose, I feel, seem to get stigmatized or punished or held against them more than the guys that are super focused. And there's yin and yang to that. There's ham and egg. And
and I was thinking more technically too.
Yeah, you're a little too aloof, or technically you're not structured enough. Well, maybe you're just a natural athlete. That's the way you play. And I think it's coming back more that you're allowed to play a little looser. But
yep. No, absolutely, and I think we've heard that from. He goes back to Bill Ranford in the webinar, talking about it. Seeing more of how he used to play being necessary in the game today.
I miss our Billy Ranford time.
We got to get some more.
Yeah, we got to get some more. You and I and Billy, we're like a 3-man wolf pack. Thanks to Dylan Ferguson. Speaking of 3-man wolf packs, Dylan Ferguson, Eli Wilson, and David Hutchison for that great conversation. And thanks to you for listening. We've gone through the pause. You guys have been along for the great ride, all the goaltenders and the parents of all ages, men and women, boys and girls, and we've loved your participation in the webinars, and now we get to watch some hockey, and we get back to training.
Well, and we should have some more NHL guests on the podcast in the next couple of weeks, because we're not the only ones who are getting back into hockey. There's a lot of guys who unfortunately aren't playing right now, but are in the league. And they're watching it and they're jonesing, and that means they want to talk about it. So we've got a few guys lined up who, like I said, not actually playing right now, but they're in the show, and we're going to catch up with them and get their opinion on what they're seeing as the games get started, as well as how they're handling what is essentially the longest offseason of anybody's career.
If you play for one of those 7 teams, expect a call. We're coming for you. Oh, and I love all the looks of the Seattle Kraken and the different color schemes that have been out there on social media. So keep those coming.
Ooh, yes.
Some great combination.
As a West Coaster, I know a lot of people think Kraken's a little cheesy. I've heard that, but I
loved it.
I was so glad they went that way and went bold. Besides, I get the whole sockeye thing, but Darren, is there an uglier fish out there?
Catfish. Sturgeon,
maybe,
those big
maybe.
sturgeon that they catch in the Fraser River, those things.
Yeah, we got all those out here in BC. But in terms of salmon, like if I'm thinking salmon, I need a big, like meaty coho. Chinooks or the sockeye with the sort of hook nose. It just.
I'm taking the Kraken.
Kraken worked for me. Absolutely.
On behalf of Kevin Woodley, I'm Darren Millard. Thanks for listening and thanks for your support at In Goal Mag, In Goal Radio, the podcast, and of course, all on social media and all of our loyal listeners. We appreciate your patronage, and we'll be back next week with another edition of In Goal Radio, the podcast.